Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my episode 2 of my look at Clockwork Empires Alpha 49. So, this is a stable branch release that was released just this past Friday. And episode 1 was, of course, me going over the changelog and the patch notes and stuff with a more or less fully developed colony. And here I am, I'm going to start a new colony, and we'll play through it for the next few episodes. So, I'm going to start a new game. Now, one thing I need to point out here, this is the embarkation screen. So for those not familiar with the game, you pick your location on this map, and this map can be regenerated by the menu we just left had a create new world button, and so this elevation map is created by there's an algorithm in there somewhere, a Perlin noise generator, I believe, and some other stuff to make it functional as a map. Yeah, so for a long time we only had 2 buttons on this map, one of which started us in the temperate biome and one of us started in the jungle biome. That's because this map didn't actually work. A lot of the backend is now in there, but it still doesn't work. However, word from the devs is that a functional biome starting system will hopefully be in the game in the experimental branch, maybe the next one, Alpha 49A, or maybe the next one after that. In the meantime, we can click wherever we want on this map, and you can see in the top left there that it shows you. It will actually tell you what biomes will be present in that starting location. I don't know what these red areas mean quite yet. Who knows? I mean, when I click on them, they say maybe there's areas you can't start in because there's nothing but water, like freshwater, lake, and ocean. It's very hard to build a colony. So clearly you can't build a colony in the ocean, but in most of these other places are okay. So areas that you would expect to be swampy, close to inland bodies of water, there's a swamp biome. So what additional information we can glean from this now is that there will be a defined swamp biome. There's a tundra biome, high prairie, tropical dry forest. I've also seen a borean tundra, I think, and also borean deciduous, something like that. Basically, here's a good one. Oh, so they're tropical wetlands and tropical drylands. And a savanna. Oh, a steppe. Yes, the steppe is present in, if you played extensively before, you know, on the temperate biome, often one edge of the map will be kind of a rocky, craggy cliff. That's what the steppe is. So, these are all biomes hopefully we can look forward to seeing in the near future. In the meantime, I suspect it doesn't really matter where we start right now, so I'm just going to pick here. I know, no. I know it won't actually be the desert. When we spawn here, it'll actually be the temperate Colorado biome again. That said, let's start with so we'll pick our starting loadout. Each of these presents a different set of, a different package of a mix of colonists and overseers and starting materials and stuff like that. I'm just going to go with the stalwart supply because no, that's boring. It starts with a bunch of guns, and I consider the stalwart supply easy mode because it starts with so many guns. Alright, so I've picked my loadout, and I'm going to start. So now the game is now generating the actual map I'll be playing on based on the biomes present at the starting location that I selected, and then it'll throw the columns down, and then we'll go. So probably the very first thing I'm going to do is I've had a couple of commenters request that their names be included in this playthrough. So I'll be getting their names in there. Then we scout around the area and see where might be a good place to set up our colony. Most importantly for this playthrough, I suspect we'll want to see the impact of the farming changes on the flow of the colony. So here's our welcome message. I can see some text formatting needs to be done since the text is actually flowing over the bottom border. It's just a randomly generated welcome message. Actually, even this is assembled out of bits and pieces of, it's like procedurally generated dialogue. Right. Oh. Okay, no one was hit by a crate. I did see a bunch of aurochs over there. And to get meat out of the aurochs, we need to hunt them. The only colonists in our colony who have guns are the only ones we can guarantee have guns are the soldiers, which is why I always enable hunting for the military. And I'll send you over here to check out those Aurochses. And in the meantime, looks like we have a good abundance of trees everywhere. Mushrooms are pretty abundant. Stone, good abundance of stone. And a nice area patch of flat land that hopefully I won't have to flatten too much to make, to make farms. I was wrong. I'm going to have to be doing a lot of flattening. So, you'll notice here, although my soldier moved to the rally point, he won't actually stop rallying to shoot at these Aurochses until I cancel his rally. Which, there we go. And now we'll see him shoot at the local wildlife to help feed the colony. Go get him, Barston Iron Solder, which reminds me, by the way, I'm going to rename you Bren Griff. This was at the request of commenter, the commenter from the channel Robust Theory, which those of you who have seen maybe my previous 2 videos will notice I've actually done a couple of videos with Bendy. So he's the guy who runs Robust Theory, and we occasionally have a laugh and play games together, and we both take monthly looks at Clockwork Empires, actually. So he's requested the position of NCO in the new colony. NCOs tend not to have very long lifespans. We tend to go through NCOs like tissue paper because they're often the brunt of basically everything. Hostile wildlife, bandits, fish people. Okay. Who else do we have? We have a couple other names that wanted to be added to the colony. Commenter requested Jesse Allen. So Jesse Allen, you're going to take over Gilbert Steel Pendle here. There we go. And one additional commenter. Here we go. By the name of Johan Berkovich. There we go. Okay, as I was saying, first order of business is to set up the carpentry. I guess I'll set you up here. Here's as good a place as any. So in that little window that popped up in the top left, that was actually... I'm just going to go ahead and install the modules inside here. But that was actually a listing of the materials that a building of that size will require. Oops, wrong button. I'm going to set up the functional parts of the carpentry, which is to say the workbenches, which is where workers turn planks, they turn lumber into planks, which are then used to make practically everything and everything else in the colony. Let's get some windows on here. Windows are not just for looks, although they are also for looks. Windows help improve the condition of the colony, of the workshop in question. Basically, the crowded and more cramped a workshop gets, the less happy your colonists will be to work in there. The way to counter this is to put on lots of frilly decorations, things like windows. Well, let's order these rocks to be mined. Things like windows and interior decorations like cuckoo clocks and wall shrines. So, having shot the Aurochses, their meat is now lying on the ground, ready to be collected. Now we'll notice nobody's collecting anything because I haven't designated a stockpile. Why don't I do that right now? Wow, it is very crowded in here. It should be clear in a moment though, because I have ordered all the trees in this area to be chopped. Now, I looked at this area and I put my carpentry here thinking it would be a nice flat area suitable for farmland. But if we look at the farm interface, we'll notice The areas that are not quite flat are red, which means I can't put farmland there until I flatten it out. So I'm going to go to the flatten. Whoops, there we go. I'm going to go to the flatten tool, and I'm going to flatten out a wide swath of land. I should keep my columns busy for a while. It's probably not wise to queue up any other buildings while the carpentry is being built. So I'd like to build beds in greater quantities, but for now I'm just going to put them where I have the space. That'll do fine. It'll be a little cramped in there. Better balance that out with some more windows. There we go. Alright. So we can see Iolanth steel solder here, working at flattening the terrain. As terrain gets flattened, of course, it goes from the red hash marks to the white grid. Okay, Jesse Allen is assembling the carpentry. So for those of you not familiar, perhaps, with Clockwork Empires, first of all, I would strongly suggest you start with episode 1 of this series. But a quick recap, it's a game in early access, which means it's an active development. It's being developed by developers Gaslamp Games, who are based out of British Columbia, Canada. It's a colony management type game. It shares some similarity with games like, say, RimWorld, a little bit like Prison Architect. The developers themselves have said that the game has Dwarf Fortress in its DNA. And so the conditions are often brutal or unforgiving, or they're certainly at least grim. You can expect bad things to happen to your colonists. Okay, the carpentry is, well, I'm not going to assign a crew there until the modules are in there for them to actually get to work. Yes, so you can probably see that the setting of the game is kind of 20th century sort of Victorian England, England of the, say, 1900s or so. Soldiers are in fancy red coats with red gold epaulettes. Men have waistcoats and handlebar mustaches. It's a whimsical take on fictional Victorian England, but it's also got the lore of the game, or the fiction of the game, also is that there are touches of sort of eldritch horror in this game. So as conditions degrade in your colony, or as they encounter mysterious and unexplainable things, it is possible for your colonists to go mad. For instance, each colonist has a madness meter here, in addition to the other 4 emotional meters. I don't really want to call them meters, that indicate their mood. And events affect their mood, so we can see each of these individual memories has an effect on their happiness, sadness, anger, and or fear, and also madness. And in turn, their personalities dictate things like how they interact with other colonists. The colonists will talk to each other, as we can see them doing here, and they'll form memories on that basis. They'll make friends with each other. They'll form attachments. And their personalities will dictate how efficiently their work crews work. If they become angry enough, then they will go on strike. So if we minimize this for a second, and we look at, this is the work shift scheduler, this row of rising and setting suns on the bottom. That's when their work shift starts and ends on any given day. So we can see the time of day and the button up here on the top right, and that corresponds to which shift should be active or inactive. Colonists require at least 2. The maximum any columns will ever work under ideal conditions is 6 out of these 8 work shifts. So each of these shifts is 4 hours. No, that's not right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each of these blocks is 3 hours. So colonists require at least 6 hours a day, that is 2 shifts, not to be doing anything. Now, if you want to stagger your work crews, you can start a shift later, so it ends later, for instance. That one runs a risk, brings with it the risk of angering your colonists. Colonists can become angry and unproductive through many things. Basically, many things contribute to their personality and their emotions. Okay. And that in turn affects productivity. But let's get back to running the colony here. So I'm going to click on the Carpentry Workshop. Okay, Jesse Allen, you get to be the head carpenter. Actually, well, for now, I guess. So we'll say, Carpentry Workshop, I want you to maintain a standing order of 5 planks. Also, I queued up 2 beds for the inside of the carpentry and a rolling door. So those are all things that have to be made in the carpentry. They get packed into crates, and then the next worker who's available to construct something will grab that crate and install it where designated. Now, the reason I hesitated when I assigned Jesse Allen to the carpentry is because not all colonists are created equal, and some are better than others at certain tasks. So if we look at Jesse Allen's personality, for instance, dominant traits are like he likes hunting and he likes mushrooms. Ideally what I want is a colonist who wants to work hard and also likes making or having things. And that's a trait, that's a materialistic trait, which may or may not be present. I am just quickly scrolling through. Nope, Mildred Bronsburn would make a good naturalist, although it may be a while before I... Oh, Johan, I'm sorry, I gave you the Craven, the Craven colonist. Craven colonists will tend not to stand and fight, which in turn means they're not very good as NCOs. But they might live longer, because they tend to run from conflict. Okay, and patriotic. So no one here is particularly good at being a carpenter, so it's okay, we just assign it to the first available guy. Okay, let's see. Has the land been flattened? Nope. I guess this was a big job, flattening this much land. What I'm thinking, I would have liked to have started on the fields. Let's flatten out this little thing here. At the very least, I think I can start construction on the kitchen now. Kitchen and carpentry, very important. I would argue probably the first 2 things you should build in your colonies. Because the carpentry and the kitchen constantly shuffle resources to and from the stockpile, I always like to place them adjacent to the stockpile, and then maybe leave one edge of the stockpile for the metalworks, because that's another workshop, makes heavy use of the stockpile. And basically that's to reduce the amount of time colonists need to spend walking to and from and hauling things. Hauling things takes up a giant amount of colonists' time. It's kind of one of those unavoidable overheads. So anything you can do to minimize that is well worth it. Alright, let's see. Let's put in a couple of stone ovens here. Should do for now. Probably want some windows in the kitchen. Okay, Jesse Allen, what are you making? What did you just make? A boxed cot. So you can see the next available worker is going to grab this boxed cot. Johan, good man. And he's going to install it here, where we have sort of the blueprint ghost of the cot. And there we go, a new bed. 2 beds for my 7 colonists. That is not nearly enough beds, and not having enough room to sleep is very bad for your colonists' happiness and morale in general. So I'm going to want to put down more cots as soon as I have room, as soon as I have somewhere to put them. So as we can see, colonists are slowly gathering the materials needed to build the basis of the kitchen, which is 8 planks and 4 stone blocks, some of which are being hauled in. And yeah, there's not much more to say at present. This is kind of the pace of the opening game. Once we start getting workshops whose output depends on inputs, which are themselves created by other workshops, we start getting really elaborate production chains. And when something breaks, you have to trace it back to see, like, why aren't my muskets getting made? And you'll see, well, muskets need iron ingots, which have been formed into metal tubes, but they also need wood, and all those are combined at the metalworks. But the metal is obtained from mines, and wood it's a when something breaks, you'll know it, but it's sometimes difficult to identify what broke. Okay, so I've got my first 2 immigrants here, 2 additional workers. Excellent. I had the opportunity to refuse them, which you might want to do if you're not able to feed your colony. Because having too many people for the amount of food you have available, or the food levels of food you're able to sustain, means basically people will go hungry and starve, and again, that will give them problems. So I'm going to just assign these workers to a couple of, you know what? I'm going to assign one of you to the carpentry crew. And the day dawns, or the night falls on the second day of the colony. And I still haven't managed to make any more beds. Man, did I order this area I ordered? Was this too ambitious? Anyway, enough land is cleared that I can designate a field. So I'm going to put down a maize crop, I guess. Yeah, that's a reasonable compromise for now, I think. So, the crop system has seen some changes, especially in drastic changes for this particular revision. You may have noticed, so I covered it a little bit in episode 1, but basically the crop itself determines the size of the field. Oh, I have a new overseer from the ministry. As we can see here, each of these work crews is staffed by an overseer, so when you have a new overseer, you have a new taskmaster, right? You have an additional crew. So this is effectively the number of simultaneous jobs your colony can have. And by assigning an overseer permanently to a workshop, that's what they'll specialize in. They'll spend all their time doing that. Unassigned work crews and workers will do, there's a class of spontaneous jobs, which they will do. And those consist of hauling things or sort of construction. Yes, as I was saying about crops, the specific type of crop determines the size of the plot. So this is the size of a cabbage plot, this is the size of a wheat field, and this is the size of a maize plantation. These gray ones are ones either you can't build them here in this biome, or they need to be researched first at a lab, which again I have to build. Here's just a gentle reminder that I should build a barracks, which actually is very good advice. I think that's the next thing I'll build. I'm going to wait until the kitchen's done, though. I don't want incoming resources diverted between 2 buildings, so they both get built at half speed, because materials and labor are being divided between them. I'd rather have one functional kitchen and then build the barracks. So when we plant a field, you can see basically each crop has its own set of stats. The most important ones are the amount of labor it takes to get a harvest out of them, and the amount of output of that type of crop. So maize here, for instance, requires 100 labor and will output 16 bushels of corn, whereas a wheat field, for instance, requires 300 labor but outputs 50 bags of flour. It's not on the tooltip, but I've basically as you saw from episode 1, I planted a wheat field and I was able to read that information. Cabbage field requires something like 50 labor but outputs only 8 cabbage. So there are different levels of efficiency. In an output per labor ratio, the wheat field is the most efficient, the maize field is only slightly less efficient, and the cabbage field is actually very inefficient. However, because the cabbage field requires... Uh, hmm. The cabbage field requires less labor overall, which means it will yield its crops sooner. Whereas the wheat field requires so much labor that you'll only get your wheat field after several days, maybe 4 or 5 days. And the maize field, you'll get it faster and you'll get less than wheat, but more than cabbage. So depending on the state of your colony and the amount of available labor you have, you should pick your crop based on what you think you'll be able to sustain. Okay, the kitchen building is complete. And now's a good time to build a barracks. So barracks is in a class of buildings known as offices, which is to say they're distinct from workshops and housing. Housing are just empty buildings intended to hold beds. They're sleeping quarters for a colonist. Workshops take in an input and produce something. So Carpentry takes in timber and produces planks and wooden furniture and things. Offices do not take in inputs, and they do not produce goods, but they perform some kind of service. So barracks lets you control your military, for instance. Mine, it doesn't take in any inputs, but it does produce minerals and rocks and things from the earth, that sort of thing. Barbershop is where the barber sets up his business, and people go there to be healed of their wounds. Anyway, time for the barracks. So the barracks, being an office, does not need to be close to a stockpile. Certainly doesn't need to be adjacent, so I'm going to put it over here. There we go. Decorative flourish there. Alright, a door here and also a door here, just so people who want to get through can do so. Now the barracks is a fine place to store cots, i.e. make it a place for your colonists to sleep, because it doesn't require it doesn't have any functional modules inside, so you don't need to reserve any of its space for things like workbenches or kilns and things. You can just jam it full of beds. Which is what I'm going to do. Let's see. From the lower class bunkhouse module list, it's 1, 2, 3 of these cots, and maybe, feeling ambitious, a couple of these fancier beds, the practical beds. That'll do, I think. So your middle class colonists will be happiest sleeping in middle class beds, and your lower class colonists, how many was that? 3 cots, 2 beds. Your lower class colonists will be fine sleeping in cots that are equivalent to their station. Middle class workers, or middle class overseers, who are forced to sleep in lower class cots, they'll be rested, but they won't be happy about it, which again affects their productivity. Basically, it's ideally you want at least 1 bed of the correct class as each colonist. Now I'm going to stick on a giant amount of windows onto this building because it's going to have a large amount of cots, which is going to it's going to lower its condition drastically. That'll do for now. So I've got all the cots that will eventually be going into this building queued up in the carpentry, and the carpenters will get to those in turn. Oh, what's this? A strange artifact has been discovered. Johan, what have you been doing? I suspect Johan has been mining this rock, and he dug up a mysterious artifact which makes a noise like a buzzing in the back of his skull and calls out his name in a strange voice. Huh. Well, let's see. Where is Johann? The early candidate for Crazy Town. Johann. So, he dug up a mysterious artifact. Actually, we can... Oh, I guess it doesn't appear in commodities anymore. Probably dug up a fishy idol, or a strange artifact, or the whatever the geometer canoptic jar. And those affect your madness. In fact, they will tend to promote craziness. This is interesting because one of his desires is also to join an enjoyable social group, i.e. possibly form a cult dedicated to the worship of the eldritch gods or something. So I suspect Johann will be a colonist to watch in this playthrough. Also, he is Craven, so there's that. A colonist in ominous dreams. I'll bet it was Johann. Baran Griff, just having a kip in the cot in the carpentry. That's how you use that word, right? A kip. And it's nighttime, so actually everyone's work shifts start, unless you adjust them otherwise, everyone's work shifts start at sunrise and they end at around evening. Because it's nighttime, nobody's doing anything. In these little speech bubbles, we can see the colonists discussing things with each other. Mostly they're complaining that they're tired, which, not surprising. There are no beds in the colony yet. How are we doing for resources? Oh, we are very short of logs, and we could definitely use some more stone. So I should probably queue up some more of those. Chop these down. Actually, stone is actively being quarried, so I don't need to queue up any more. Although, as I say that, the kitchen also has a loading bay door, so I should probably queue that up in the carpentry. The one issue is that practical beds require 5 planks, which means we're going to need a ton more wood, which is fine. I guess we've got some more queued up. So I'll point out revisions to the UI here. This is the event ticker. Everything that happens gets an entry here, and you can expand it to see further back in time, or you can compress it down to 1 line. I like to keep it around 3. Johann had another ominous dream about a terrifying black pyramid. Huh. So the game itself will tell you can reduce incidences of madness with alcohol. And alcohol is the thing you can produce in your kitchen, provided you have the right modules and the right inputs. So you can make beer out of wheat you grow. You can brew chicha, which is a drink made out of maize. And then those are potable, of course, but they can be further refined into things like moonshine and whiskey, which have stronger effects. The function of alcohol is to diminish the impact of memories on a colonist's personality. So, for instance, if Johann were able to get his hands on booze, he might be able to reduce his effective madness, because he can drink to forget. So, what the game is telling me here is that I don't have the planks necessary to build all these windows, and I don't have the modules for these 2 middle-class beds. Which is just a reminder, the Carpentry hasn't built these beds yet, but it has built these cots. So this is actually, items of like type will be stacked into 1 space in your stockpile. So this is actually 3 cots waiting to be assembled here in the barracks. Alright, well, I think that will do it for episode 2, or episode 1 of the playthrough. The actual episode 1 being, of course, me reading patch notes in the previous episode. Things are off to a fine start. Nothing eventful has happened yet. Hopefully we don't get attacked too soon, because the colony only has like 1 pistol, I think. Oh, we do have immigrants, though. New immigrants are assigned to the unassigned worker pool, and they wait for me to assign them to an active squad. I'm going to assign one of the immigrants to the militia. Okay, if we take a look at Iolanthe Steel Solder's crew, we can see that her work schedule is actually full of angry red faces. And that's because her crew is actually on strike and refusing to do any work. So actually I'm going to take your worker away and give you to Rowena. Striking workers happens when colonists are sufficiently unhappy for a long enough period of time. And we can see here Iolanthe's anger is her most prominent emotion. Why is she so angry? Well, if we mouse over her memories, we can see many of her most recent memories are of being tired. You can see each of these being tired memories increases anger and decreases happiness. So she's terribly dissatisfied and does not want to work, which is not too much of a problem right now. But of course, if she were assigned to a specific workshop, for instance, that entire workshop was shut down. And then the next thing is me wondering why no one is making copper pipes. Okay, so the kitchen has functional modules now. I need to assign a work crew to it to make pies and things. Who of these colonists would make a good cook? No one here is a particularly good cook. What's going on with Bran Griff? Oh, good. Bran Griff is doomed and reclusive, both excellent qualities for the leader of my military. But on the plus side, he does want to kill bandits. A colony full of characters this time. I get the feeling the Empire didn't send its brightest and best. Who's going to be our Rowena Tomp? You will be our kitchen crew. Here we go. Now, when we eventually build a laboratory, I might want to reassign Rowena to be its scientist because she has this attribute. She wants to be a scientist, basically. And fulfilling colonists' desires also goes a long way to contributing to their happiness. Right, that said, now that we have a kitchen, I'm going to assign some standing orders to the kitchen. I've got a whole bunch of raw black cup fungus, which might taste a bit better if it's cooked. I mean, not much choice here in the colony, but we do have a ton of steaks as well. So I'm going to say maintain a level of 10 basic food at all times. Colonists will prefer not to eat raw food unless they're very hungry, but if they become hungry enough to eat raw food, that also means they're quite unhappy, which again has a knock-on effect of making them less productive workers and striking and so on. You want to keep everyone as happy as you can within reason. Obviously, you won't be able to fulfill everyone's desires, often because they conflict. So the greatest good for the greatest number, and that might include shooting some people who disagree. And I have been assigned another overseer. And the barracks is complete. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to assign the military crew to this barracks. I just need to check which one that is. Oh yes, Bran Griff. Bran Griff's ill-fated 189th Guards. So you may notice each squad has its own nickname, and the squad's nickname is based on the attributes of the overseer. For instance, Jesse Allen has the Big Game Hunter attribute, so his crew becomes known as the Hunting Band. Iolanthe Steel Solder has easily influenced personality trait, so her crew is the Pushover Band. So we have the Pushover Band, the Pioneering Crew, the Gutless Band. Yes, Johann the Craven, overseer of the Gutless Band. And that's why Bran Griff's. That's why our colony's brave soldiers are known as the ill-fated guards. Because Bran Griff was born under an evil star. Okay, so I think I'll wrap up this episode here. Again, the colony is progressing nicely. It'll become busier and busier with each subsequent episode as we build more and more interlocking workshops. But until then, thanks very much for watching this one. My name is Alfred. The game is Clockwork Empires, again, being developed by Gaslamp Games. It's in early access, and you heard me talk about upcoming features and things. stuff is being added all the time. Again, I'll say ahead of time, if the biome update comes out during this playthrough, which I hear it very well might, I'm probably going to restart this colony. I'll still keep all the contributor names, but I want to see the new I want to see the new biome technology. So, thanks for watching this one. I will catch you guys next episode.